welcome to my Ponga Reservoir. A very impromptu little photo shoot this morning. Very impromptu little photo shoot this afternoon. Without too much ado, I think we'll make a start, and I'll introduce first of all this little tree. I say little tree, it's quite a grand old tree, I should say, on the side of this reservoir, and what we're going to do with it. What I want to do today, there's been a technique that I've been wanting to try for a little while now, and it's by a Spanish photographer called Pep Ventosa. So I'll pop his name up here, and he has a rather wonderful little technique of taking landscape imagery, often of trees, but sometimes urban landscapes too, and he creates the most wonderful art. So this little video is going to be in two parts. It's going to be me explaining what you do out in the field, and we'll go through that now, and then part two, or the second part of this video, will be back in the office, and I'll take you through the editing process, because that's really where this technique takes off and takes on a life of its own. I'm going to break out my little viewfinder because it's very bright, and I don't want to rely on the rear LCD for this. So I'm just going to adjust our composition, and unfortunately there is a blue sky up there which playing absolute havoc with flaring across this image, so I may need to adjust this somewhat. I'm on a quite high ISO and a wide aperture, so 6.4. That's giving me approximately 200th of a second, and that's probably good for our purposes here, because I want to freeze those leaves somewhat. Now there are some clouds about, so what I'm going to have to do, I think, is I'm going to have to wait for a cloud to come along and just partially mute that sun, because it is completely in our face here. So well, we waited a good while, good 20 minutes or so, and nothing. So what I've done is I've moved around the tree so that the light is off to our right hand side now, and there's some lovely light that's catching on the side of this grand old tree. I'll have to have a closer look at it later on and just see if I can guess what type of tree it is. So camera's set up at f6.4, ISO 640, and we're at 200ths of a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by taking my first image of this tree, and I'm going to do it in portrait mode, I think. In order to do that though, I'm on the 32 to 64, and I think I'm going to change this to the 20 to 35 and come down to about 24-25 millimeters. Okay, so that's us. We've got the 24 on now. Same settings, f6.4, 200th of a second. This time we've got a lot more room in and around that tree, so yeah, that's much better. I'm currently, I said about 24, it looks like I'm around about that, 23, 24 mil, so that looks pretty good. I'm just going to make sure that I set it on manual, and there we go. So it's manual, so the settings are the same for when I move around this tree. To about 24 mil, and we'll take that starter image. And then what Pep Ventosa does is he takes an awful lot of images of the same subject, just shifting around, and I'll probably go out of shot, but I'm taking 3 or 4 steps and then taking a shot focused on the tree. I'm trying to keep the same distance between me and the tree, so it's almost just circling it. Okay, so that's done. So let's head off to the studio and we'll take it from there. So here we go. Okay, so now that we're back in the office, let's make a start. So we're in Photoshop, as you can see, and what we're going to do now is open up the 20 or so images of the tree that we've just taken, and the best way to open them from within Photoshop is scripts and then load files into stack. So we'll just browse, we'll get those files, so I think there's 22 of them, and we'll open those up. We don't have to do anything here. I'm not going to align them. I'm going to do that by hand, and we don't need a smart object just for the time being. So we'll just wait for a moment and you'll see all these files loading up here. Should just take a second. Okay. So I think that should be all of them. And I'm just going to select the top one and the bottom file, holding down Shift, and then I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to hold Option and just click the bottom file. Oops. Select them all. Option, click the eye, and it switches them all off except for that last one. Okay, because that's where we're going to start. And I'm just going to leave that one as it is. It's nice and central. We've got some nice space around it. And so for our purposes, that's exactly what we want. So we're going to move up one. I'm just going to switch on the layer above. You can see there's a slight movement there because it's I've spun around. I've walked around this tree. If you remember, I walked around probably 180 to 200 degrees. So every image of the tree will be a slightly different angle. So we'll move on to this image here, and this is really where the Pep Ventosa process technique comes into its own. And remember, he does this with over 200, 300, 400, 500 images soon, sometimes. Well, we're just going to go with about 22. So we've got this second image, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to lower the transparency probably to about, I don't know, about 65. And that will allow some of this ghosting to occur that you can see on the screen here. And with our move tool selected, I'm just going to adjust this tree so that it sort of matches up with the one below. Now it might not be perfectly aligned, but as good as. That's as good as we've got there. And the other consideration that we've got, so we've got the opacity at 65 and our blend mode is normal. So we can play with both the opacity and the blend mode as we move up this layer stack. So there are many options that are here. The options that tend to work well with these images are darken. As you can see there, it really does darken that image. And you've got multiply. Colour burn doesn't work so well, as you can see. Linear burn. The darker colour works quite well, as you can see here. Lighten, and I want a nice, airy, ethereal feel to this image. So I'm going to be looking at probably some of these options down here, lighter colour, overlay, and some of these soft light works quite well, hard light on occasion. And I think for this one, I think I'm probably going to start with lighting. I think I quite like lighting, the way it just brings up those light textures in there. So we'll click on lighting, and then we'll move on to the layer above. Again, we started at 65 as the opacity, so as I move up the stack, I'm going to be making it more and more transparent as we go. So 65, I'll probably go to about maybe 61, or our layer. So we did have lighten before, screen is okay, but we can pick and choose the ones that we think will work out best for our image. So it's pin light, looks okay, except it's creating some rather odd colours up here in the clouds, as you can see there. So I think probably we're going to come back to I think darken looks okay after we've just done our light one. So next, so we're just going to very slowly, remember 61 before, so 57, 56-ish, 55. And once again, let's choose a blend mode. Screen is quite bright, but I want that airy feel. Lighter colour is quite good, but I've got to watch those clouds. So quite like screen there, I think. We'll go screen, and we just move our way up. So there's 55-ish, I think, so we'll go to 51. Let's see what we want to do here. Darken, multiply is usually a bit too harsh. Lighting, colour dash, maybe soft light. Soft light looks quite nice here. So I think we'll do soft light. And you may notice that we have a whole pile of ghosting in here from some of those houses in the background. Now you can get rid of those if you really wanted to, but let me just go back a touch, because I think we can fix it this way. So we've got this one here. I'm just going to lift that up, and now you can see the houses are matching. And this one, I'm going to lift that one, just like allow it like this, make sure we center it. Done. And we just make sure this one will have to move up a fair bit, I think. And then it go left. That looks okay. You see now there's much less of that ghosting here now that we've leveled it correctly. So I think about there looks okay. Yep, that looks okay. And I'm not going to bore you, but we just continue our way through these images, adjusting them to make sure that they are in the right place. It's just keeping them level and just building slowly on these images. This one actually I'm going to leave as normal, and then we'll just move on up. So we'll shift on now to our final image.